Hi, we're delighted that you've joined us for this information session on reducing exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals. I'm Sandra Curtis, a researcher at the Public Health Institute. I'm partnering with Gail Lee, UCSF's Director of Sustainability, on this project. Our aim is to help pregnant people and new parents reduce their exposure to problematic endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs. Let's get into specifics. Here's what we'll cover. You'll briefly learn about the global plastic pollution problem. We'll discuss the chemicals in plastics that are health hazards. We'll talk a little bit about the body's endocrine system. You'll learn about endocrine disrupting chemicals called EDCs. We'll discuss some risks from fast food containers, canned foods, and heating plastic in microwaves. We'll focus on how you can reduce your risk by sharing ideas for safer choices. Let's see a little bit about the global plastic pollution problem in this short video.
You've probably heard about a giant trash island in the ocean, or that poor sea turtle and the straw. Maybe you've even heard how plastic is being found inside the fish we eat. The plastic crisis gets a lot of attention, but the headlines usually focus on the plastic that ends up in the environment. And that's just part of the story. The truth is, plastic has a whole life cycle that's hidden from view, one that harms people and the planet from start to finish. Let's start at the beginning. Plastic is made from fossil fuels like oil or fracked natural gas. Extracting those fossil fuels and turning them into plastics creates a lot of pollution. Pollution that most often affects marginalized communities nearby. As we've gotten better about using less oil and gas to power our lives, the fossil fuel industry found a lifeline in plastics. In fact, oil and gas companies are doubling down on plastic production, with plans to build or expand over 300 petrochemical plants in the US alone by 2025. But these companies already produce more plastic than we can use. So where's all that plastic going? A lot of it's flowing into new markets, in places like Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Because more than any other product category, plastic isn't driven by the demand for it, but by the supply. Corporations like Unilever, Nestle, and Procter & Gamble are aggressively marketing single-use plastic products around the world. These companies go to places like Indonesia, where I live, and push their products onto communities that just aren't prepared to deal with all that plastic. Maybe they're used to using natural packaging. Maybe they live on a tiny island without a system of waste collection. And on top of that, countries in the global north are shipping their own plastic waste into these countries too. When you add that all up, it's no wonder so much of this plastic ends up in the environment. And globally, that's where a whopping 32% of plastic packaging ends up. 40% goes to a landfill, where plastic just piles up for future generations to deal with. And 14% is incinerated. Incineration is a nasty business, producing toxic smoke and fly ash. These super expensive facilities depend on plastic to burn everything else. It is oil and gas after all. So they want to see more plastic, not less. Yahoo! Then there's recycling. Unfortunately, it's not the solution that many people think it is. Just 14% of plastic packaging gets recycled, and only 2% is effectively recycled, meaning it becomes something as useful as before. The rest is downcycled into something worse. And most recycled plastic is only recycled once, before ending up in landfills, incinerators, or the environment anyway. So it turns out that we can't burn, bury, or recycle our way out of this problem. And we can't just scoop all that plastic out of the environment either. That's like trying to bail out a bathtub with a teaspoon while the tap is on full blast. So how about we turn off the tap by shutting down the plastic machine? That means passing policies that create systemic change, like phasing out the single-use plastics that pollute the most, ending the fossil fuel subsidies that are fueling big plastic, and holding companies responsible for the plastic waste they create. That's how we can achieve our vision of a zero-waste future, where all of our products and packaging can be reused or repaired, effectively recycled or composted, and ultimately how we create a sustainable, circular economy that works for both people and the planet. Visit storyofplastic.org to learn more and take action.
As we saw in the story of plastic from the 1950s to today, what looked like a wonderful material that had many uses has become an environmental problem all around the world. Not only does sea life ingest plastic, but they get entangled and trapped in it. The plastic is everywhere. Land animals are impacted too. We are not immune. We can be exposed to the chemicals in plastic throughout the entire life cycle. Workers can breathe in the chemicals when they are extracted and transported, or if they're released into our drinking water or onto the fields that grow our food. When we use plastic products, our skin can absorb the problematic chemicals. Plastic products can remain in the environment for hundreds of years, attracting other toxic chemicals which we can inhale. The worst is if they're burned. Even tiny microplastics and microfibers contain these toxic chemicals, which circulate in dust and are in our clothing. Health experts have been warning about the chemicals in plastics. A recent report about the dangers of plastics warned that plastics contain and leach or leak hazardous chemicals, including endocrine disrupting chemicals, those EDCs, that threaten human health. Doctors, like your obstetricians and pediatricians, are concerned about the health effects of these chemicals on mothers and infants. They concluded that sadly, most pregnant women are told little or nothing about reducing their exposure to chemicals, despite evidence suggesting that ingredients in them can have profound impacts on the health of the infants. That's the purpose of this project, to inform you and to provide you with sample safer products to help you reduce your exposure to these chemicals for the long-term health of you and your family. What are these EDCs, the endocrine disrupting chemicals in plastics? First, let's get a little understanding of what the endocrine system is. There are special groups of cells in our bodies that produce the hormones, the chemical messengers that regulate every process in our bodies, everything from our heartbeat, temperature, and breathing to growth and development. The endocrine system even regulates when you'll go into labor and breastfeeding for your baby. Natural endocrine chemicals can be disturbed or upset in many ways by outside chemicals that set them off course. When they're disturbed, they can cause a variety of health problems. These non-natural chemicals or mixtures of chemicals can mimic or imitate, block or interfere with the way that the body's natural hormones work. Let's watch this short video to learn more.
If you've been listening to the news at all, you've probably heard about the dangerous chemicals that are called endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs. Inside our bodies is a network of glands and organs called the endocrine system that produce, store, and secrete hormones. Normally, the hormones go from the gland or organ to the other organs and fit right into specific receptors expressed in cells. Kind of like how a key goes into a lock. But when EDCs get into the body, they can mimic the shape of the hormone, and they go into the receptor instead. They can trick the body into thinking they are a hormone or block the hormone from fitting into its receptor. Fooling a cell in this way can trigger abnormal processes in the body. This can wreak havoc on the entire endocrine system and may lead to severe health consequences. EDCs have been linked to human health issues related to sperm quality, fertility, abnormalities in sex organs, endometriosis, early puberty, nervous system function, immune function, cancers, breathing problems, metabolic issues, obesity, heart health, growth, neurological, and learning disabilities, and more, because hormones regulate nearly every process in the body. What's worrisome is that exposure to EDCs can happen anywhere and come from the air we breathe, the food we eat, and the water we drink, and through the skin. Some EDCs even transfer from mothers to fetuses and infants. They can be found in industrial chemicals that leach into soil and groundwater and then make their way into the food chain and build up in fish, animals, and people. Consumer products such as plastics, household chemicals, fabrics treated with flame retardants, cosmetics, lotions, products with fragrance, and antibacterial soaps, pesticides, fungicides, or industrial chemicals in the workplace. The best way to avoid exposure is to check labels and avoid products containing known EDCs. Research on EDCs is growing, so watch for new information on products to help your family's health. Contact your elected officials and tell them to pass the Personal Care Products Safety Act, which would create an FDA review process to check the safety of ingredients used in personal care products like toothpaste, soap, and sunscreen. Patients have questions. We have answers. The Hormone Health Network is your trusted source for endocrine patient education. Our free online resources are available at hormone.org.
Here's another short video that's specifically about the EDCs in plastic.
There's been a lot of buzz about dubious chemicals in the environment that might contribute to some pretty frightening stuff like obesity, breast cancer, thyroid issues, and they seem to lurk everywhere. In pesticides, cosmetics, and especially plastic packaging. In light of this, it's understandable to start panicking. But before you do, let's hear what molecular biologist Bruce Bloomberg has to say on the subject. He's been studying the link between synthetic chemicals and obesity for around 15 years. So he might be able to give us a better idea of what's really going on and what to do about it. Bad news is, Bloomberg confirmed that yep, we're surrounded by these chemicals. One of the most well-known is BPA, or bisphenol A, which shows up in water bottles, cans, milk cartons, and more.
You get them from thermal paper receipts. Like I have these receipts from a recent trip. All of these things are coated with bisphenol A, and it goes right into your skin.
BPA has been making headlines for years about whether or not it's harming us. And while FDA-funded and independent studies have conflicting conclusions, the bigger heart of the issue is this: BPA is hard to get away from, because it's a key building block in the tough, clear, flexible plastic called polycarbonate. And that proximity to food is what concerns scientists like Bloomberg.
You don't want to store food in plastics because some fraction of those plastics will leach into your food.
The BPA molecules that make up plastic are bound together by what's called an ester bond, which is extremely sensitive to heat. So when you heat up your food in plastic, that heat breaks some of the bonds, releasing the chemicals into your food. A survey by the CDC of 2,517 people estimated that over 90% of Americans have detectable levels of BPA in their urine. And BPA isn't alone. Phthalates, which make plastic flexible, can also leach into food when heated. And reviews of hundreds of studies have linked BPA and phthalates to heart disease, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Not to mention, a 2015 review linked phthalates with impaired neurological development in children, which in 2018 prompted the American Academy of Pediatrics to announce that families should avoid plastic food containers entirely. And other studies on animals like mice and monkeys have shown that these chemicals can lead to problems in the lungs, brains, and reproductive organs. This is about the time someone like me would probably panic. But there are ways you can avoid these chemicals. Bloomberg suggests it's best to just stick to heating your food in anything but plastic. Now, quick aside, BPA-free plastic containers aren't the answer, because research suggests that BPS and BPF, the most common replacements for BPA, might have similar effects on your body. Instead,
Opt for replacements like ceramic or glass containers.
You have to do the best you can, and it makes sense to me to do the things that give you the most return for the least effort.
And here's the best part. Once you reduce exposure, those chemicals slowly leave your body. As Bloomberg says, they're stored in fat cells, which eventually die and ultimately leave your system.
Don't stress about it, right? Do your best and make conscious choices to improve things.
Rethink Plastic was a pilot study I previously conducted with researchers from Child Health and Development Studies. Since the 1950s, they've followed pregnant women who had been exposed to toxic environmental chemicals and their children, grandchildren, and now even some great-grandchildren, over 50,000 people. They've learned that exposure to environmental chemicals creates increased risks for cancers and other diseases, not only for the women, but down through their generations. In our Rethink Plastic study, we showed that by informing people like you, they could reduce their risk. And that's our goal with you. We know that you want to create the healthiest conditions you can for your baby. About 80% of our exposure to these problematic endocrine disrupting chemicals, the EDCs, come from what we eat, how we shop, and how we make and store our food. So our program focuses on what you buy, how you prepare it, and how you store it. That's the way we help you reduce you and your newborn's exposure. On one level, we're asking you to break up with plastic. You might think of it as honoring and reviving old family traditions. We recognize that change can be hard, so we're making suggestions on several levels. First, some general suggestions for shopping, cooking, and storage. Then we suggest the most essential change. We also share the easiest change and the most challenging ones, so you have choices about what might work best for you and your family. When you shop, think about buying the freshest foods you can. Colorful food not only is healthy, but they contain lots of important vitamins and minerals. Buy foods loose instead of in plastic bags to help the environment. Think about reusing what you buy, like glass jars that you can wash and reuse. They're great for storing all kinds of foods, from nuts and leftovers to flour and rice. If you buy a stainless steel water bottle, which might cost $20, you only spend that once. If you bought a $1 plastic water bottle every day for a year, you'd spend over $350. An easy change to make when shopping is to avoid handling paper receipts with your bare hands. As the video noted, receipts can have bisphenol A or BPA on them, which can quickly be absorbed into your skin. If you do touch these receipts, wash your hands as soon as possible with soap and water. Don't use hand sanitizer, which will make your skin absorb more of the chemical. The most challenging shopping changes you can make are to reduce your takeout and fast food. Most takeout food is stored, prepared, and/or packaged in plastic. Even compostable containers can have harmful chemicals in their inside liners to prevent leaking. Buy more loose, fresh vegetables and fruits instead of in plastic bags or in cans. You'll help save the environment and reduce your exposure to the harmful EDCs in them. When you cook, choose stainless steel or cast iron pans. They're the safest alternatives. Stir with wooden or stainless steel utensils. While non-stick cookware can be very appealing, most have problematic chemicals in them, like Teflon. Avoid using cling wrap to cover dishes when heating food in the microwave. Another dish on top works nicely. The most essential cooking change you can make is to always put your food or drinks into glass or ceramic containers when you heat them in the microwave. This is very important. Never heat food in plastic. Chemicals in the plastic will leach into the food. Even if the container says it's microwave safe, it's not. There are no microwave safe plastics. They all can leach chemicals into your food when heated. Remember, put your food and drinks into glass or ceramic containers to heat them in the microwave. This may be a challenging change if you have limited time each day to prepare food, but when you can, skip the can. Buy and use less canned foods because most cans contain a plastic liner of BPA. Choose loose dried beans and soak them overnight, or use a pressure cooker. Bulk beans or other dry goods are cheaper, so you can save money in addition to making a safer choice. Think about plastic as the very last choice for storing any prepared foods. Cling wrap or saran wrap should be avoided when you're storing food. Try beeswax sheets or wax paper. Leaving plastic water bottles or other drinks in a hot car can cause the chemicals to leach into the drink. When you're storing food, the essential change to make is never put hot food in plastic containers. The heat makes the chemicals in the plastic leak into your food. Let it cool down first to room temperature. Cold food items are okay to put into plastic containers, but glass or other options are always safer. If glass containers have plastic lids, wait until your food has cooled to room temperature before putting the lids on. The easiest change to make when you're storing food are to store food in glass, ceramic, wood, or food-grade stainless steel. You should also wash plastic containers or utensils by hand, even if you have a dishwasher. The heat in the dishwasher causes the chemicals in the plastic to leach onto the rest of the dishes. The most challenging change to make for storing food may be due to cost. If you can choose items in glass jars instead of plastic, you'll be able to reuse them for storing, serving, drinking, freezing, and heating foods. Here's a quick summary of what you can do to reduce your exposure to EDCs and your baby. Use glass or stainless steel water and baby bottles. Never microwave food in plastic containers. Store food in glass or ceramic containers. Skipped canned foods and beverages. Reduce takeout or fast food. Eat more home-cooked food and fresh fruits and vegetables. Choose wax paper, beeswax covering, or other safe options instead of cling wrap. Please let us know if you have any questions. We'll contact you in a month to see what changes you've made. You'll take another survey much like the first one. We hope you'll enjoy using your sample gifts, share what you've learned about safer choices with others. We want to help ensure the long-term health of you and your family as your baby grows. Thanks very much for joining us today.